What's up, you kooks? Welcome back to Cycle Trash Garage. I'm your host, Martin Lopez, and you're watching Cycle Trash TV, the show where I teach you how to fuck up your bike one step at a time. Today, I'm going to show you guys how to build riserless bars. Depending on what look you're going for is going to depend on what you end up doing. Kind of showing you how to build these in the video, but you know, if you go a different route, you just overbend it, or you decide to cut and weld some corners in. That's going to depend on the look you're going to go for. So, with that being said, let's get the video going. I haven't posted anything in a while because I've been working a lot, so I'm sorry for that. But I got a lot of other videos that I'm editing to throw up. Probably within the next week or two, I'll start throwing them up online. Yeah, let's do it. So here I'm measuring out 25 inches on 1 inch diameter tubing. It's a 0120 wall, I believe it is on this one. I already know that 25 inches gets me roughly a 14-inch piece once I bend it to 90 degrees. On mine, I have to cut on this bandsaw. This bandsaw sucks. It's a crappy little Harbor Freight bandsaw, but it's been through a lot and it cuts at a weird angle, so I always end up having to face everything that I cut on here. And I'm sorry, I apologize in advance, but my camera keeps shutting off for some reason. Yeah, I cut two 25-inch pieces, gets me roughly 14-inch tall bars once it's bent. Here I am facing off both ends. On this I have to be pretty accurate with it. That way both sides, both pieces are exactly the same length at 25. So I end up cutting them to be a little bit longer than 25 inches. Yeah, from here I'm showing you that I'm measuring at 8.5 on my bender. If I bend 8.5, or I'm sorry, if I measure 8.5, it bends to be about a 9.5 flat. So it gives you a 9.5 flat for your controls and your levers and whatnot. You know, this, you can play with it. This is just how I know what I need and what your bike needs. You know, when you're bending, on my bends, I do a 3.5 radius bend. It takes up, I believe it was like 6 inches or something like that of material. But you don't have to do bends. You can cut them at an angle, 40-degree angle or 90-degree angles, and do, you know, weld on those. But yeah. Here I'm welding on the bungs. These are bungs that I made myself. You can buy bungs online for doing this. There's a bunch of websites that do it, that sell them. In my case, I was just able to acquire a lathe that I was able to build a couple off of, just because I build bars, so I needed some on hand. For this, you know, if you don't have any welding experience, you might need someone that does. You don't want to go too hot on the bungs and melt the threads. You know, there's a lot of ways to keep from doing that. My method's just mine's just weld fast with high heat, but I never reach the threads anyways, and I usually end up re-tapping them, not because they need them, but just for peace of mind mostly, really. Yeah. You can see that I don't, you know, it doesn't require much. It's just a quick little weld and you're good. So here I'm putting them in the jig. For these bars, they sit on center 3.5 inches. You can directly bolt these to your bike and set them up how you want to do them, and then weld the centerpiece on them, or just have two pieces and just make sure you tighten down that bolt really tight, and then you have your bars. This jig I bought off of Lil Chopper 74 on I think his website's like Gorilla Fabrications or something like that. I'll try to put the link below, but his jig is specifically machined out to be 3.5 inches on center for all Harley applications. Unless you're running a Springer, then you're gonna have a wider on center. But for these, it's always gonna be 3.5. Here I make sure that it sits flat. You know, you don't want that little wiggle in there. If you have the wiggle in there, then one side's higher than the other. So I always, you know, make sure everything's sitting straight. I bang it into place. If you don't, you know, you'll be riding down the road and you'll feel it kind of crooked. But always make sure. On these, I make them about a 5 or 6 inches high. I think I make them 6 inches on this one because it sits an inch high because of the jig, so it gives you a 5-inch pullback. Yeah. And then I go ahead and weld in a center piece. On this piece, it's 2.5 inches wide between the tubes, and you want to make sure you have that 2.5 inches. If it's a little too over, you're gonna push the bars out, and when you go to unclamp it, it's gonna push that bottom end in, and then it's gonna make your 3.5 on center out of whack. And if you make it too small, it's gonna bring that top in with the heat of the weld, and then it's gonna push the bottom out. So you always got to make sure that that's pretty accurate. 2.5. I mean, if you can see this, there's a center jig on this between that center piece that I'm welding and the bottom of the jig to kind of keep that bottom end at 3.5. But I mean, with the heat, it's gonna want to pull in, so you want to make sure that that's perfectly 2.5. I made the mistake of not having it 2.5, and yeah, it causes a big issue. So that's that. I mean, if you follow the instructions, this is kind of what you're getting yourself into here. Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you do different cuts, different angles, you'll come out with different results. Just, you know, mess around with it, figure out what you want to do beforehand, measure twice, cut once, and, you know, this is the end result. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You know, go fuck yourselves. Have a good day.